Sadvaitam Savadutam Haridala Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakandikam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabando Jagatpate Gopecha Gopika Kanta Radha Namostute Sapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhama Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakapa Chubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta
A fan or something.
The AC comes on in the middle of class. AC comes on in the middle of class. It's on a schedule, but AC comes on in the middle of class.
Well, it's going to come on in a few minutes? Okay, then close it.
We close the door because the AC is set.
Oh, okay.
And it's hotter outside than it is.
Oh, okay. That's what he just told me. Thanks.
It's very hot here. Last week we had one morning where the low was 92. That's hot. Probably be like that tomorrow morning. Yesterday was very auspicious. The high was 108. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskritya.
Narayanam Namaskritya.
Naram Chaiva Narottamam.
Ram Chaiva Narottamam.
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam.
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam.
Tato Mudiraye.
Mudiraye.
Nastapreshu Bhadreshu.
Nastapreshu Bhadreshu.
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya.
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya.
Bhagavad Shloke.
Bhagavati Tamashloke.
Bhakti Bhavati Naistaki.
Bhagavati Nastaki.
Today, Thursday, July. July 30th, 2020, the year of the epidemic. So we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, the status quo. Chapter 25, the glories of devotional service. This is one of the supermost infused and packed up chapters of intense concentrated nectar of Krishna consciousness in the Bhagavatam. The glories of devotional service is spoken by Lord Kapila to his mother, Devaki. Text number 27. Ashevayayam prakriter gunanam.
Ashevayayam prakrite gunanam.
Jnanena vairagya vijimbhitena. Yogena maya pitaya cha bhaktya. Mam pratyagatmanam ibhavarunde. Ashevayayam prakrite gunanam.
Ashevayayam prakrite gunanam.
Jnanena vairagya vijrimbhitena.
Jnanena vairagya vijrimbhitena.
Yogena maya pitaya cha bhaktya. Mam pratyagatmanam ihavarunde.
Mam pratyagatmanam ihavarunde.
Asevayayam prakrite gunanam.
Asevayayam prakrite gunanam.
Jnanena vairagya vijrimbhitena.
Jnanena vairagya vijrimbhitena.
Yogena maya pitaya cha bhaktya.
Yogena maya pitaya cha bhaktya.
Mam pratyagatmanam ihavarunde.
Mam pratyagatmanam ihavarunde. Asevayayam prakrite gunanam.
Jnanena vairagya vijrimbhitena. Yogena Maya Vitaya Bhaktya Mampratyagamanamivaharunde
Asevayaya Prakrtir Gunanam
Asevayayam Prakrtir Gunanam
Yanena Vairagya Vijrimpitena
Yanena Vairagya Vijrimpitena
Yogena Mayarpitaya Cha Bhaktya
Yogena Maya Vitaya Bhaktya
Mam Pratyagatmanamihavarunde
Mampratyagamanamivaharunde Asevayayam Prakrtir Gunanam Yanena Vairagya Vijrimpitena Yogena Maya Vitaya Bhaktya Mam Pratyagatmanamihavarunde Asevayayam Prakrtir Gunanam Yanena Vairagya Vijrimpitena Yogena Maya Vitaya Bhaktya Mam Pratyagatmanamihavarunde Asevayayam Prakrtir Gunanam Yanena Vairagya Vijrimpitena Yogena Maya Vitaya Bhaktya Mam Pratyagatmanamihavarunde. Any other takers? Okay, word for word, please repeat. Asevaya. By not engaging in the service.
By not engaging in service.
Ayam. This person. Prakrite Gunanam. Of the modes of material nature. Jnanena. By knowledge. Vairagya. With renunciation. Vijrimpitena. Developed. Yogena. By practicing yoga. Mayi. Unto me. Arpitaya. Fixed. Cha. And. Bhaktya. With devotion. Mam. Unto me. Pratyagatmanam. The absolute truth. Iha. In this very life. Avarunde. One attains. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. Thus, by not engaging in the service of the modes of material nature, but by developing Krishna consciousness, knowledge and renunciation, and by practicing yoga, in which the mind is always fixed in devotional service under the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one achieves my association in this very life, for I am the Supreme Personality, the Absolute Truth. Please repeat. Thus, by not engaging in the service of the modes of material nature, but by developing Krishna consciousness, knowledge and renunciation, and by practicing yoga, in which the mind is always fixed, in devotional service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, One achieves my association in this very life.
One achieves my association in this very life.
For I am the Supreme Personality, the Absolute Truth.
For I am the Supreme Personality, the Absolute Truth.
Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. When one engages in devotional service to the Lord in the 9 different kinds of bhakti yoga, as enunciated in the authoritative scriptures such as hearing, shravanam, chanting, kirtanam, remembering, offering worship, praying, and offering personal service, either in one of them, or 2 or 3, or all of them, he naturally has no opportunity to engage in the service of the 3 modes of material nature. Unless one has good engagements in spiritual service, it is not possible to get out of the attachment to material service. Those who are not devotees, therefore, are interested in so-called humanitarian or philanthropic work, such as opening a hospital or charitable institution. These are undoubtedly good works in the sense that they are pious activities, and their result is that the performer may get some opportunities for sense gratification, either in this life or in the next. Devotional service, however, is beyond the boundary of sense gratification. It is completely spiritual activity. When one engages in the spiritual activities of devotional service, naturally, he does not get any opportunity to engage in sense gratificatory activities. Krishna conscious activities are performed, not blindly, but with perfect understanding of knowledge and renunciation. This kind of yoga practice, in which the mind is always fixed upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead in devotion, results in liberation in this very life. The person who performs such acts gets in touch with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Chaitanya therefore approved the process of hearing from realized devotees about the pastimes of the Lord. It does not matter to what category of this world the audience belongs. If one meekly and submissively hears about the activities of the Lord from a realized soul, he will be able to conquer the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is unconquerable by any other process. Hearing or associating with devotees is the most important function for self-realization. Asevayayam bhakter brahmanam yanina vairagya vijrumpitena yogena mayarpitaya cha bhaktya mam pratyagatmanam ivavarundi. Thus, by not engaging in the service of the modes of material nature, but by developing Krishna consciousness, knowledge in renunciation, and by practicing yoga, in which the mind is always fixed in devotional service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one achieves my association in this very life, for I am the Supreme Personality, the Absolute Truth. So thus we experience simply by hearing this verse and hearing this purport, it's like Srila Prabhupada is transporting us to the platform of Krishna consciousness. Just by Lord Kapila Deva is explaining this so wonderfully. It is so powerful, so potent, that just by hearing this verse and this purport, we actually feel like we're connected to what is being explained. It becomes possible, it becomes attainable by us, despite our lack of qualifications, to attain this simply by hearing. So that is the nature of hearing Krishna Katha, and one aspect of Krishna Katha is the philosophy that Lord Kapila Deva is speaking here. one becomes transported beyond one's proposite, beyond the boundaries of sense gratification, which is our, as conditioned souls, that is our ordinary station in life, that we are operating within the modes of nature, within the boundaries of sense gratification, and we're identifying with that realm, and we're thinking that we are products of that realm. And therefore we have goals and aspirations and hopes that are colored by those things, the modes of nature and our desires for sense gratification. That is actually explained by Lord Rishabhadev, another incarnation of the personality of Godhead, in the 5th canto, where he says, Paravavas kaladabo gajato yavanajiyasata atmatatvam yavakriyastavaridom menomai karmatmakam hina sharira bangaha. As long as one does not inquire about the spiritual values of life, one is defeated and subjected to miseries arising from ignorance. Be it sinful or pious, karma has its resultant actions. If a person is engaged in any kind of karma, his mind is called karmatmaka, colored with fruitive activity. As long as the mind is impure, consciousness is unclear. And as long as one is absorbed in fruitive activity, he has to accept a material body. So that karmatmaka karmatmaka, absorbed in material activities, then the vision is colored. And the example is given of colored glass. One looks out at the world through colored glasses, then everything that he sees is colored by those glasses. I'm looking out through these glasses, but everything I'm seeing is in my shloka book that I can actually read it. Without the glasses, no, cannot. Perhaps in bright sunlight. So, karmatmakam hina sharira mangaha. We don't want to be absorbed in Maya, in the modes of nature, thinking that we are products of this material nature and arranging our various desires and goals and hopes in this way. As a matter of fact, Krishna addresses this very thing in the Gita. Where is it? 9th chapter? Mogasha, Mogakarmana, Moginyana, Chetasaha, Rakshashim Asurim Chaiva, Prakatim Mohinim Tritaha. Those who are thus bewildered by and attracted by demoniac and atheistic views, in that deluded condition, Mogasha, Asha means hope, Moga, baffled, Mogasha, Moga Karmana, the fruit of activities, Moga Jnana, whatever knowledge they have, the Chetasaha, their culture of knowledge, their hopes for liberation, their fruit of activity. What? Moga. All defeated. So, that is the position of the living entity who is not in Krishna consciousness, that always defeated by the material energy. What a lamentable condition to be in. Yet, that is the condition we find ourselves in as non-liberated souls, conditioned souls. We find ourselves beset like this, and we would like to become free from that condition, especially as we begin to hear from sources of knowledge including Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Nectar of Devotion, Srila Prabhupada's books. As we begin to hear, then through that association of that sound vibration, and in the association of devotees, we develop a desire for a different direction, to become free from the suffering that is the condition of the poor jivas who are inextricably intertwined with material energy. When I was first coming to Krishna consciousness, and my older brother was also coming with me to the temple, although he stopped. But one time he was actually chanting 16 rounds, but he wasn't chanting regular rounds. He wasn't concentrating and focusing. But he had a dream in which he dreamed that he was sewn up by these threads and bound and couldn't move. And he knew that this was the material energy which had him bound up. Just like perhaps, there's these insects that will capture another insect and then build a thing around it. Like I think the wasps do that. And then when they're hatchlings, the eggs hatch of their offspring, and those offspring will eat the insect that's bound up inside the cocoon-like thing. How horrible is that? How would you like to be in that position? Yet that is the position that we are in. We think, oh, not me. I got it together. But actually we are in that position, that same position. Inextricably entangled in the complexities of the material nature, and unable to extricate ourselves by our own efforts. But by the association of devotees, and by hearing this wonderful philosophy of Krishna consciousness, hearing and chanting and serving, then that entanglement in the material nature, in the modes, becomes dissipated. In the first canto of the Bhagavatam, the second chapter, this process is very nicely described, how by hearing and chanting about Krishna, then one's attraction for Krishna consciousness becomes awakened, and one's entanglement in the modes, especially the modes of passion and ignorance, become broken up, and those influences become diminished. And thus one becomes free from kama and lobha, desire and greed, and anger, and so many of our enemies that torture us, punish us, to be their servants. There's one verse, let me look it up. It's a really cool verse. I'm sure you'll appreciate it. You have this one ready, but we thought of it. No. This is it. It's from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Nectar of Devotion by Srila Rupa Goswami. Kamadinam Katina Kutibha Palita Vinir Deshash Tesham Jata Mayi Karuna a drop of no Shanti. Sri Jaipan Ataya Pate, Sampraktam Lat Rudis, Sam Ayata Sharanam Abayam, Mam Niyukshavat Madasye. Oh my Lord, there is no limit to the unwanted orders of blessing desires. Although I have rendered them so much service, they have not shown any mercy to me. I have not been ashamed to serve them, nor have I even desired to give them up. O my Lord, O head of the young dynasty, recently, however, my intelligence has been awakened, and now I am giving them up. Due to transcendental intelligence, I now refuse to obey the unwanted orders of these desires, and I now come to you to surrender myself at your fearless lotus feet. Kindly engage me in your personal service and save me. What a cool verse that is. So we have accepted these masters, these desires for sense gratification, and we are rendering them so much service. Yet, even though we are serving them, they are not rewarding us for that service. Rather, they are punishing us. Still, like fools, we go on serving these unwanted desires. And Rupa Goswami is here. I didn't even desire to give them up. And I just kept on doing my service to Maya. But now, due to your association and hearing about Krishna consciousness, my intelligence has awakened. And so now I'm going to give them up. Now I want to give them up. Due to transcendental intelligence, I now refuse to obey the unwanted orders of these desires. And now I come to you to surrender. So this is the position that we want to be in, that we want to take to Krishna consciousness. And then when these desires, they are giving us their orders, and then we do not comply. We refuse. I refuse to obey you now any longer, you rascal mind. Dushta mana, tumi kishara Vaishnava. Oh, you rascal mind, what kind of Vaishnava are you? That simply for name and fame you want to chant in a secluded place, but really your bhajan is sense gratification. That is your meditation, that is your bhajan. So this is Bhakti Siddhanta, chastising the mind. Dushta mana, you rascal mind. So here Rupa Goswami is saying, all right, I cannot follow your desires and your orders anymore. I refuse to obey you now, because now I'm going to surrender to Krishna. And so he's praying to Krishna to help him not obey the dictates of sense gratification. So Prabhupada explains very nicely that when one is engaged in Krishna consciousness, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vananam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atma, Nivedanam, the 9 processes of devotional service: hearing, chanting, Vishnu Smaranam, remembering the Lord, Archanam, which is worshiping the deity, Vandanam, offering prayers, Dasyam, becoming the menial servant, Sakyam Atma Nivedanam, considering Krishna as one's best friend, and Atma Nivedanam, offering everything to Krishna. These are the processes of devotional service. And there's a corresponding personality who is the emblem of each one of those processes. And then there's Maharaj Ambarish, Atma Nivedanam. He performed all 9 processes. What is that first one? Savai Mana Krishna Pada Rindayor, Vachamsi Vaikuntha Gunarna Varane, Kadal Harer Mandira Marajana Shu, Katam, Satkatole. He engaged all his senses in the service of the Lord. And he performed all the 9 processes. So he's the emblem of all the processes of devotional service. The Prabhupada says here in the purport, whether one does 1 process, or 2, or 3, or all of them, he naturally has no opportunity to engage in the service of the 3 modes of material nature. Jai. That is victory for the conditioned soul. That is the actual inner meaning of yoga, to be fully engaged in Krishna's service in such a way that there's no time, there's no opportunity for Maya. If one has the intention, he can always find the time and the place. There was one TV show when I was a kid. It's about time, it's about space, it's about men in the strangest place. So, the conditioned soul is fully absorbed in the space-time continuum, which he sees as a playground to fulfill all his evil desires for sense gratification. We can see a normal person say, well, what are you talking about? That's my life. I remember when my mother and my stepfather, they were in their 70s, and they had a very nice house, and they had the very advanced satellite TV thing with 8,400,000 channels. And they would work a little in the garden and do a little this and do a little that. But then my stepmother told me, she said, TV, that is our life. So that is the life of the conditioned soul, just dreaming of enjoying this material world somehow or other. So Prabhupada says here, unless one has good engagements in spiritual service, it is not possible to get out of the attachment to material service. So you can't just give it up. You have to have something better. Vishaya vivartanti niraharashya dehina lasa varjam rasokhyasa param drisva nivartate, Krishna says. That since gratification is given up, the taste may still remain, but when one experiences a higher taste, then he gives up the lower taste. So if you're worried about $10, and then you get $1 million, by getting the $1 million, you're no longer worried about the $10. So when we get the higher taste of Krishna consciousness, then the difficulties of the material energy and that entanglement, it actually becomes a non-issue when one becomes fixed up in Krishna consciousness. Of course, that is a gradual process. One will not be fixed up just like that. It takes patience, enthusiasm, confidence, and practice. That is yoga. So I'm going to read a few verses from the 2nd and 3rd chapters of the Gita, and then we'll stop and ask the questions. Let's see here. So here is some verses, not exactly sequentially, from the Gita, beginning with shloka number 45. So we're talking about our entanglement in the modes of nature, the 3 modes, right? So Krishna says, the Vedas mainly deal with the subject of the 3 modes of material nature, Tara, Gunya, Vishaya, Veda. So rise above these modes, O Arjuna. Be transcendental to all of them. Be free from all dualities and from all anxieties for gaining safety. And be established in the self. You have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the fruits of action. Now there's a concept, a revolutionary concept, that you work to serve Krishna, but the fruits of your activities are not yours to enjoy. Never consider yourself to be the cause of the results of your activities. And, this is a good one for devotees, never be attached to not doing your duty. Because we have so many duties, don't we? Text 50 states, a man engaged in devotional service rids himself of both good and bad actions, even in this life. Therefore, tasmad yogaya yujashva yoga karmasu kaushalam. Therefore, strive for yoga, Arjuna, which is the art of all work. So we have to engage in some type of work. Krishna says you can't even maintain yourself without work. Next verse, number 51. The wise engage in devotional service, take refuge in the Lord, and free themselves from the cycle of birth and death by renouncing the fruits of action in the material world. In this way they can attain that state beyond all miseries. In verse 56, he continues, one who is not disturbed in spite of the threefold miseries, who is not elated when there is happiness, and who is free from attachment, fear, and anger, is called a stage of steady mind. Stitadir muni uchate. And in 59, the verse we just quoted, the embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, though the taste for sense objects remains. Anyone ever have that experience? To be honest. But ceasing such engagements by experiencing a higher taste, one becomes fixed in consciousness.
Sorry, can I ask a question on that verse?
Wait, we'll come to the questions in a moment. Text 70, which is a wonderful verse. A person who is not disturbed by the incessant flows of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which is ever being filled but is always stilled, can alone achieve peace, not the person who strives to satisfy such desires. And then there's a verse in the 3rd chapter, one who restrains the senses and organs of action, but whose mind dwells on sense objects, certainly deludes himself and is called a pretender. Mityachara saujate. Mitya means false. Achara means behavior. Mityachara saujate. He's called a pretender. And let's see, there's one more I'll read in this section. Perform your prescribed duty, for action is better than inaction. A man cannot even maintain his physical body without work, and that goes for the ladies also. So, to renounce sense gratification is possible only by engaging in Krishna consciousness. It's not exactly possible otherwise, because whatever one is trying to renounce will take over, and one will not be able to avoid indulging in that thing, whatever it is. If one is just trying to stop. No, you have to have positive engagement in Krishna consciousness. So we'll stop here and take questions. First one from Dr. Chris.
You kind of answered, it was like, like it says, that the taste still remains. So does that mean like saying fasting? Like I find it, I'm doing it fast for a spiritual reason, for Krishna, I can do it. But if I'm just fasting for my own health, it becomes very, very hard. So is the idea that the body is going to act in the way, the body's going to feel hungry, but the mind and the consciousness is engaged in Krishna. That's the higher taste? Is that experiencing the higher taste? Or is that, in essence?
Yes, the higher taste of hearing and chanting. Because just like reading this verse and this purport, this is a higher taste. And we become enlightened by hearing, just by hearing about hearing, we become enlightened. One has to engage the senses and the mind in Krishna consciousness.
So in other words, if someone is just trying to renounce what their mind is always engaged in, what they're renouncing, they're called pretender.
Yeah, and they will succumb. to that thing. Krishna says in the Gita that even one of the senses focusing on the objects of desire can sweep away even a person who's learning and intelligent. Like a boat is swept away on the water by the wind. Even a big boat in the middle of the ocean can be swept away and swallowed up by the waves. So, therefore it requires very serious attention to practicing Krishna consciousness to the best of one's ability. Whatever your ability, whatever your level is, practice Krishna consciousness to the best of that ability. And then you will make advancement. And Krishna will help you. Anyone else? Okay. Anyone else? Yes.
This is in this verse, those by not engaging in the service of the Lord's eternal nature, but by developing Christian consciousness, knowledge and renunciation, and by practicing yoga. So I hear that Christian consciousness is supposed to include everything. Why does it say developing Christian consciousness, knowledge and renunciation, and practicing yoga? It doesn't sound like it's all separate.
He's expanding the definition.
Oh, okay.
He's showing us what is that Krishna consciousness. Specifically, developing Krishna consciousness, which consists of knowledge, in the process of practicing renunciation, and practicing the yoga process, which means to fix the mind on Krishna, through hearing, chanting, remembering, serving. So Prabhupada is expanding. And then he specifically lets us know that the mind is always fixed in devotional service. And if one endeavors in this way, one achieves God's association, even in this life. What Kapila says, for I am the Supreme Personality, the Absolute Truth. So he's making it easy for us.
Okay.
Making it very easy for us. It's easy for the simple, but very difficult for the crooked. Krishna consciousness. Our problem is that we are a little bit crooked because we have been for so long in Maya, and that is our comfort zone. So we have to get out of that comfort zone. But we have to get into a more comfortable zone, which is Krishna consciousness, where we taste the happiness of associating with devotees and hearing and chanting. And then that will gradually pull us out of Maya. Evam prasana manaso bhagavat bhakti yogataha bhagavat tattva vijnanam mukta samgasya gayate. Gayate. You get victory. Mukta samgasya. Freedom from bad association. Bhagavat tattva vijnanam. Realization. Pratyakshavagamam dharmyam. Direct experience of the personality of Godhead. Bhagavat tattva vijnanam. Direct perception of the truth. Susukham kartavagayam. And experience that unlimited happiness, which Lord Rishabdev calls Brahma Saukyam Tvanandam. Spiritual happiness, which is unlimited. And whatever taste of sense gratification, that gives us a little bit of material happiness, but it's very limited. And then there's consequences. You've got to pay the price. What is that price? Repeated birth and death. Going up and down the wheel of samsara. And the time to get off this merry-go-round. This wheel, this cycle of birth and death. Samsara, it's like being caught in a forest fire. And the way you get out is by accepting the rain of mercy coming from the lotus mouth of the spiritual master. It puts out the forest fire. Therefore, we offer our humble obeisances to such a spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada. Any other questions, comments, realizations? Yes, Anna.
I have a question. sense enjoyment. So let's say, for example, if there was a specific activity that I like to engage in that was sense enjoyment, that after some time it just kind of went away and I didn't feel that desire, but then all of a sudden it kind of came back. Is that normal for it to, after years, kind of come back, or is it more of like, does it mean I'm not properly engaged or not properly, maybe chanting or hearing?
Yes. What is that from the comic books? Who knows what evil lurks in the heart, and the shadow knows. Men and women. So, things are there in our heart. And so because we haven't made sufficient advancement to leave them behind, like Rupa Goswami is doing in that verse that I read, I now refuse to obey those desires, because I'm coming to you, my Lord, to surrender, and therefore I'm taking shelter of you. So when we fully take shelter of Krishna, then what can disturb us? If we fully take shelter in Krishna consciousness, as it is said, what can go wrong? But if we don't take shelter in Krishna, and we just dilly-dally around and dance around with Maya a little bit, then what can go wrong? A whole heap of stuff can go wrong. So these desires, sometimes they pop up in our hearts. Just like when one is gardening, one plants the seeds and one waters the seeds of the creeper of bhakti, and the creeper of bhakti grows within one's heart. But there are also weeds that are growing. They're getting the water too. And they're growing. So what do you have to do? Grab the weed, pull it out by the root. And don't just leave it sitting there next to the garden where that root can get covered by a little dirt and sprout up once again. Root it out and get rid of it for once and for all. Not so easy. Easy to say. Oh yes, I'm chanting Hare Krishna. What is the difficulty? Well, the difficulty is, I'm still thinking about all that sense gratification I've been doing for the last billion lifetimes. Maybe sometimes I feel a little separation. Feeling a little separation. Oh, I miss it. Oh, I haven't had it in a long time. Wow. Maybe if I could taste it again, it would be better. And I won't get so burned out. Just think about it a little bit, and then it's okay. But we have to pull those weeds out and pray to Krishna. Please help me get rid of this desire to enjoy this material world and be your competitor. Instead, let me develop the pure consciousness of wanting to serve you and love you. And then if we do that, then everything will be all right. But don't become discouraged. Who would be surprised that some desire will bubble up within the heart? Anyone here will be surprised? I'm not surprised when I see it in myself. Not surprised at all. It's like, oh, you again, you know, rascal. Thought I got rid of you for good. Then you come back to entice me and engage me in your service, but I do not obey you anymore. You are not my master. Be gone. Get out, you rat fink. You have been banished. You cannot return. So we think like that. And when that only happens by the grace of Guru and Krishna, they help us. Does that help?
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else?
One thing you had said last class you gave at the Sunday feast that was kind of profound to me was you said that the reason we're caught up in Maya is because we're surrendered to Maya. And it kind of hit me to think that, you know, like most people before Krishna consciousness or they're not practicing Krishna consciousness, if they have a desire, they feel obligated to immediately fulfill that desire. And that's being surrendered to Maya. And then surrendered to Krishna is that you don't pay any attention to Maya and your desire is to please Krishna. And the thought is that is there a time in between where, we can be surrendered to Krishna, we don't want, to serve Maya, but the desire or the temptation, she's still there, do this, do that, do this, do that, do this, do that. But if you're not surrendered to her, if you're surrendered to Krishna, you don't listen to that desire, you listen to Guru and Krishna.
Yes, but that requires practice, cultivation, training. The mind may give some order. Pursue this desire. And we tell the mind, buzz off, Jack. Ain't following your orders. I got orders from the higher authority, from Guru and Krishna. That's the orders I'm following. And the mind says, but just a little bit. Just a little bit. Give me just a little bit. And then I'll be happy. He said, you'll never be happy. Rat. You'll never be happy. If I give 1 inch, you'll take a mile. So therefore, we are no longer the servant of the mind. Sorry, buddy. Got a new master. And it ain't you. It's Krishna. And then the mind becomes trained. When the mind becomes trained in Krishna consciousness, and the mind says, okay, do this service, chant your rounds, pay attention, focus, hear, chant, serve devotees, don't eat nonsense, bogus things, only take prasadam. The mind becomes trained up. And someone says, well, here. And our mind says, no. We serve Krishna. We don't do that stuff anymore. We serve Krishna now, so, be gone, Dave. I'm not your servant anymore. I'm Krishna's servant. So, you can bother me, but I'm not your servant. Sadhya. Now I'm serving Krishna. I give a better taste. You can't give me any good taste. You only give me misery. So let me serve Krishna, and there I get a real good taste. Okay, so we'll stop here. Srila Prabhupada ki, Srimad Bhagavatam ki.